Stocks trend up, stocks trend up after we had a little bit of a tumble yesterday on the stock market. Gretchen Whitmer is in talks with the Biden camp to become the vice presidential nominee. As I said it was going to happen, Senator Graham requests the names of those that were unmasked by the Obama administration, and Jane Roe gets an interesting twist after her passing a couple years ago. And we'll talk about something I'm thankful for. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today? Well, I'm a little bit tired because I stayed up late playing Stardew Valley last night, but I feel like I got better sleep than I usually do when I play video games at night for you guys because, Stardew it's just such a relaxing game. The music is right there on point. It puts you into a sense of security, sense of calm. The graphics are nice. They're not overly blue, so it doesn't mess with your blue light schedule. It is so relaxing. I had a lot of fun. We needed that change of scenery for a little while. I do want to go back, and we are going to go finish New Vegas, but I wanted that change of scenery. That was a lot of fun. So I'm glad you guys indulged me, and I'm thankful to Ron for the suggestion to do that. So yeah, it was nice. It was a great time. But we have got a lot to get to today. So before we get started, head on over to freedomscoop.com. Freedomscoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. We've got the generational gap. Hey, you can watch my gaming over there. We've got Freckles and Brit, and some bloopers looks like they have out there. We've got the Daily Ignoramus. We've got the generational gap. We've got the R-rated conservative. We've got Wyatt Bergenhoff, who looks like he's going to be doing an interview coming up here, so go and check that out. And we got this show, so go and check all of us out there. You can see all of our backlogs all the way back to the beginning, all the way back to October 2018 when Jake and I started this out, all the way back to the beginning, all of our episodes, all of our merch. You can go check us out anywhere, anytime on your mobile. We've got a great mobile app, or not mobile app, but mobile desktop layout, so you can go and check that out, or the desktop layout here, and yeah, enjoy our stuff. And before I get started with the news, I did want to point something else out here, and this is just kind of funny to me, from yesterday. So, from Twitter yesterday, the Democrats pointed this out. Our nation could lose a generation of minority-owned business because Trump put big corporations first, and it was a New York Times article, which, yeah, I'm not subscribing to the New York Times right now. Maybe if we get a little bit of PayPal coming in, I'll do that for you so we can read some of the dribble that comes out of there. But yeah, if they're going to block everything unless you subscribe, I'm not going to read from there. So I'm not going to click on the link. But I did point something out here because, it's Trump's fault that the stimulus didn't reach the minority-owned businesses. So coming down here, scrolling down here, I asked the question, didn't Senate Democrats rewrite the bill? And House Democrats passed the bill, by the way. I didn't point that out. I figured that would be too obvious. Trump just signed his name at the bottom. He didn't have anything to do in the legislation except for maybe a little bit of strong-arming to get what he wanted into the bill. Otherwise, he would have vetoed it. But for the most part, he just puts his name on the bottom. Legislation comes from the legislature, and in case anybody has forgotten that, if you do want to go over to my Twitter page and pick up the link there, I put a link to a video that is at the Democrats' level to remind them how their jobs work, because it appears that they have forgotten. And of course, I'm talking about the classic Just a Bill video from Schoolhouse Rock. And now, by the way, that song is stuck in my head, just so everybody's aware of that. Let's look at stocks. So, from the Dow Jones today, it looks like we're looking at yesterday. We didn't quite get up to where the futures were saying we were going to get up to, but held up for a little while, and then we just kind of dropped off at the end. But it looks like futures are back up according to the news that we have here. So, from Investors Business Daily, Dow Jones futures jump amid earnings. Alibaba, Facebook, Netflix above buy points and stock market rally. This is from Scott Latonin. Dow Jones futures jumped early Wednesday along with S&P 500 futures and Nasdaq futures amid earnings results from Lowe's and Target. Breakout stocks Alibaba, Facebook, and Netflix headlined these six top stocks in or near buy zones in the coronavirus stock market rally. The coronavirus stock market rally paused Tuesday in the wake of testimony from Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin and Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. Dow Jones leader Intel is rapidly approaching a new buy point. Alibaba and FANG stock leaders, Facebook and Netflix, are in new buy areas. Meanwhile, top growth stocks, Advanced Micro Devices, and Tesla are approaching new buy points. I would love to see, because Tesla's in the news, that's why he's going up. So I want to see the end to all of this threat and saber rattling of moving out of California. And I wish to God I could get an ear with Musk, because I would have him take over the one little plant up in Minnesota that's about to close. That's about to put a lot of people out of work, especially in the area that I grew up in. So, yeah, if I could get an ear with a guy for a few minutes, it's already tooled for automotive manufacturer, not necessarily electric automotive manufacturer, but automotive manufacturer all the same. The place is already tooled for that, so they would have, I think they'd be good with that, but we will see what happens there. Early Wednesday, home improvement chain Lowe's reported better than expected first quarter results, sparking a 6% gain in pre-market trade. Meanwhile, Target topped quarter one earnings forecast Wednesday, fueled by a strong digital sales during the coronavirus crisis. Target shares moved up less than 1%. I'm sure the big box guys are going to go up a little bit because, all those anti-Democrat people and the Trump MAGA guys over in Wisconsin and Illinois don't want to go shop at Menards right now because they make you wear the mask. Well, I would wear the mask for Menards. For a local company, I'll wear the mask. I'm that guy. I will go to a local company before I go to a bigger box store from around the country. And I do like the Home Depot. Don't get me wrong on that. But yeah, it's home. And it's got a place in my heart. Plus, they're a private company. They can say what you have to do whatever they want on your grounds. Like I said in the beginning of this, when the controversy came up with Costco and Menards, I said, if Menards makes a rule that says you have to wear a yellow shirt to come in, I would wear the yellow shirt. It would be ridiculous, but I would do it. Their house, their rules. All right, let's keep going. Early Wednesday at around 8:10 a.m. Eastern Time, Dow Jones futures were up 1.15% versus fair value, while S&P 500 futures gained 1.1%. Nasdaq 100 futures rallied 1.1% versus fair value ahead of the stock market open. Remember, overnight action on the Dow Jones futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market season. So we're seeing a little bit of uptick, which is good, especially when they tumbled out. But the nice part about the tumble from yesterday is it didn't even hit where it was 3 days ago. As far down as it was. We're still in the 2400 range. We're not down to the 2300 range, but of course CNN has got to throw their spin on this here. So let's move on and see what CNN Business has to say. Is the bear market over? Wall Street isn't so sure. This is from Matt Egan over at CNN Business. Excuse me. America's stock market is signaling the economy will rapidly recover from the coronavirus crisis. The S&P 500 future has surged 32% from its March 23rd lows. The Nasdaq is now just 6% away from setting record highs. That breathtaking rebound, not breakthrough, suggests many investors are betting the ferocious response from the federal government, those are scary words, will set the stage for a V-shaped economy recovery. President Trump shares that optimism. The market is very big, and I think you're going to have a V, Trump told reporters on Monday. Sophisticated investors, though, are far more cautious about the challenges ahead. It's because people like CNN keep telling them that they must be afraid, and they better not tear their eyes away from CNN because they might miss the next thing they need to be afraid of. Just 10% of fund managers expect a V-shaped recovery. We're already there, according to a survey released by Bank of America on Tuesday. 3/4 of those fund managers expect a more modest U-shaped recovery, where the economy stagnates for a period of time before gradually recovering. Well, get the government out of the way and let people go back to work, and stop feeding them the fear porn that they they're not allowed to go back to work, and you'll see a lot more of that. Or even a dreaded W-shaped recovery. Ooh, scary. Which entails a rapid rebound followed by a second serious decline and an eventual rebound. That relative pessimism explains why only 25% of fund managers polled by Bank of America believe that this is a new bull market. In fact, more than 2/3 think this is just a bear market rally, or a dead cat bounce in the midst of a longer-term bear market. These sophisticated investors are sitting on lots of cash. Cash balances for the fund survey were at 5.7% in May, well above the 10-year average of 4.7% and the pre-crisis level of 4% in February. Investors are still extremely bearish, Bank of America strategists wrote in the report. Well, as I've been saying from the beginning of this, you can shut down our main economy and we will have a back alley economy. We will make that money flow. Whether the investors, the banks, or the governors want us to or not, we will have an economy. It's just a matter of whether the rest of you fucks want to get involved. The biggest fear is that the second wave of coronavirus infections will derail the economy, the survey found, and the second biggest tail risk listed was that the economy will suffer from permanently high unemployment. Randall Kroesner, who served as a top Federal Reserve official during the 2008 financial crisis, thinks the economic optimism may be misplaced. We went down like a V, but we're not going to come up like a V, Kroesner told CNN Business. It will take a long time for the economy to fully recover because there are fundamental changes that are occurring. The way people consume, travel, and work are going to change. Kroesner, now a professor at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, pushed back against the idea that central banks and national governments can quickly restore the economy to pre-crisis level, rather. It's not going to be possible to go back to where we were in February or March, he said. Jerome Powell, chairman of the Federal Reserve, is optimistic on America's ability to recover in the long run, yet even he is trying to dial back expectations of a rapid recovery. When asked if he anticipates a V-shaped recovery, Powell told 60 Minutes that it's very plausible the economy will take some time to gather momentum, and that would imply that at the beginning at least, the recovery would take some time to get moving, to gain steam. So that's what CNN has to say on that, and I mean, we're seeing the evidence. People want to participate. I would say it's better than half of the people in this country at this point want to participate. I understand the fact that certain government officials on both sides of the aisle and certain banks at this point as well don't want to participate because they're afraid of the U or the W or so many other things here, but the people want to participate. And once again, we will move money whether you want us to or not. We will find a way, or we will move product at least, not necessarily money, but we will find a way. We will absolutely find a way to move money, product, and process around this country. Because we like stuff. It's the American dream, is to get more stuff. All right. Next one, and this was the one I called this, in the air. And of course it's not confirmed at this point, but I knew this was the direction that they were going. From the New York Post, from Ebony Bowden. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer in talks to become Joe Biden's vice presidential pick. And I kind of figured this out before we even had a Biden pick at this point, because between the State of the Union rebuttal speech that she gave and the fact that she has been on the news every day since they started to shut the government down for coronavirus, I knew that they were courting her to do this. They were trying to make sure that you had the name Whitmer in your mouth every single day. So you accepted the fact that she was going to be a big part of the national discourse, and here it is. Let's read. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who has been a governor for 5 seconds, has confirmed she is in talks with Joe Biden's campaign to become his running mate, as the race to join the ticket reaches an unseen fever pitch. I've had a conversation with some folks, Whitmer said in a Tuesday morning interview on the Today Show. It was just an opening conversation, and it's not something that I would call a professional, formalized vetting, she added. A rising star in the Democratic Party who has garnered national headlines manufactured national headlines through her handling of the Wolverine State's COVID-19 outbreak. Whitmer is considered one of the several women on the short list to join Biden's ticket. The 48-year-old governor joins Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth, who, according to a Senate colleague, was selected for an interview with the Biden camp over the role. Whitmer was quick, however, to downplay her angling for the job during the Today Show interview, with Michigan rolling from civil unrest over extensive coronavirus-related lockdowns. I'm making a little bit of time to stay connected to the campaign, but the most important thing that I have to do right now is be the governor of my home state, she said. That's all that matters to me in the moment. Biden has committed to selecting a woman to become his VP, leading to an all-out bidding war between female lawmakers. Former Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams is aggressively campaigning for the job, while Senator Kamala Harris, Klobuchar, and Elizabeth Warren, all former 2020 presidential hopefuls, are also angling for the role. In an interview with the Post last month, President Trump said he believed Biden would choose Warren to join his ticket, saying he believed the presumptive Democratic nominee owes Warren the top spot on his ticket because he never would have gotten there that far without her help. Yes, it was the Super Tuesday bump from Warren taking Bernie fans that really pushed the momentum for Biden to get through. That much I can absolutely agree to and attest to. The funny thing to me, first off, Tony Evers' lockdown wasn't quite as draconian, but it also wasn't as publicized either. And that is a part of the fact that it was similar in nature to what Whitmer did, and I lived through it, but they never made mention out of the national news because Evers wasn't going to be the vice president of the United States, or at least the candidate to be the vice president of the United States. Whitmer was. I also find it funny, speaking of governors and Wisconsin governors, during the recall election and the subsequent re-election of Scott Walker here in Wisconsin, one of the things that, I can't think of the woman's name right now, the woman that ran against him, one of the things that her camp was saying, oh, what the hell was her name? That's going to drive me nuts now for the rest of the show, and I'll look it up afterwards, but one of the things that she was saying throughout the entire thing was that Scott Walker could not commit to be the governor for his full term anymore because he was going to try to run for president. This was back in 2014. She came out and kept saying it over and over again. Don't vote for this guy. He's not going to commit to the state. He's going to go run for president instead. But I noticed the national news isn't asking the same things of Governor Whitmer. So yes, it's a tale of two parties when you talk to what's important for this, because oh hey, why won't you commit to a full term if you're the governor of one state? And why was it such a big deal that Scott Walker wouldn't do it? So something to look forward to, but yeah, I knew that she was going to be the pick. I know that people are saying that it's got to be a black woman, but no, they've been courting her for this for a while. All right, next one. From CNN, from The Point, would Republicans be better off if Kelly Loeffler stepped aside? I read a part of this article yesterday, and I found it interesting enough that I think we got to take a look at this one. So this is directly from Chris Cillizza. Almost from the moment that Republican Georgia Governor Brian Kemp appointed business executive Kelly Loeffler to the Senate seat vacated by Johnny Isakson earlier this year, she struggled to put a foot right. Less than a month after Loeffler was appointed, she engaged in a ham-handed attempt to align herself with Trump wing of the Georgia Republican Party by accusing Utah Senator Mitt Romney of seeking to appease the left by calling witnesses who will slander Trump during their 15 minutes of fame during the impeachment trial. Despite that attempt to solidify Trumpers behind her, Loeffler, is it Loeffler or Loeffler? Because I keep hearing people say Loeffler, but I remember that the O and the E together is a soft E sound, so it should be Loeffler, wouldn't it? Was unable to keep Representative Doug Collins, who rose to national popularity among Republicans during the House impeachment investigation, from challenging her in the upcoming August 11th primary. Then came the real problem for Loeffler, or maybe just her biggest problem, in mid-March, as the country was beginning to shut down due to the coronavirus, and the stock market began to look very shaky. It was revealed that Loeffler and her husband had sold 27 stocks between January 24th and February 14th at a value of $1.28 million and $3.1 million, and also bought 3 stocks for between $450,000 and $1 million, including shares in Citrix, a teleconferencing software company. Loeffler, who has considerable personal wealth, said neither she nor her husband had any knowledge of the sales or buys, which had raised red flags due to the fact that senators had been given private briefings about the potential severity of the coronavirus prior to the public being aware. By early April, however, Loeffler announced that she and her husband would sell off all of their individual stocks. In spite of that, Loeffler continued to defend the trades as recently as mid-April, blaming the attacks on socialism. The series of controversies has led nonpartisan campaign handicappers to downgrade her chances of holding the seat, as Cook Political Report Senate editor Jessica Taylor wrote in April. Even before the stock trade surfaced, early polling in the race showed support for Loeffler was soft, and the stories about her stock trades couldn't have come at a worse time too, right when she needed to be boosting her relatively unknown image with voters. First impressions matter, and this isn't a good one for a political newcomer. All of that has led to some speculation that Loeffler may not run again, or at least that if she didn't run, it would improve her party's chances of holding the seat in the fall. On Wednesday, Loeffler rejected the idea out of hand, telling CNN's Manu Raju no when asked whether she might drop out of the race, and insisting she is absolutely still running. Which, sure, but if Loeffler can't change the trajectory of the race, and if polling suggests she could cost the party the seat in the fall, whereas Collins would not, then expect the pressure on her to reconsider her November plans to ramp up significantly and soon. So, as far as Loeffler goes, first off, if you know that something like this is coming, we were talking about this back in January already. Styx was talking about this on one video a day on his channel. Since the second week of January, he was talking about this. So we knew that something was coming, and people, Tim Pool and Styx, were both telling people right away, go buy your stuff. This is going to do something. This is going to do something to the American economy and the stocks. This is going to put people... It might not destroy people outright, whereas we lose 2% of the population and everybody dies, but this is going to put a panic in everybody, and they're going to rush to sell everything off. So I understand that the Senate got some sort of advanced knowledge to how bad everything was actually going to be, but in all fairness, we knew it was going to be bad. But the other part of it is Loeffler is an appointee, so she is at a disadvantage going in. So Collins actually might be the right person for this seat. There's a very good chance he might be, especially if the GOP wants to keep it. Collins might be the guy. But I think a good primary would be the best point for us to sit down and figure out whether or not this was going to be the thing. Let the people of Georgia decide whether they want to see Loeffler go or if they want to see Collins in, and let's not have any more government appointees or CNN appointees. All right, next one. From Fox News, as Biden commencement address, Columbia Law faculty who oppose Kavanaugh downplay Tara Reade accusations. This is from Greg Ree. Columbia Law School was essentially united in opposition to Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court confirmation in 2018, as the university established a new mandatory sexual misconduct education initiative. Dozens of faculty members signed into petition in the New York Times saying that the nominee's temperament alone was disqualifying, and students staged round-the-clock protests. Now, as Joe Biden prepares to deliver a virtual commencement address at the Columbia Law School on Wednesday, he also stands accused of sexual assault, which he too adamantly denies, along with previously reported incidents of inappropriate touching. The once vocal advocate for women's rights in the Me Too movement at New York City's only Ivy League law school, though, have a starkly different view toward Biden. Instead, the Columbia Law School's Dean Gillian Lester issued a statement praising Biden for setting an example as a leader, lawyer, and public servant. As to explain the change in the tone on campus, the law school's press office declined to comment to Fox News. No way! However, in one-on-one interviews with Fox News, several Columbia Law School faculty members made clear the topic was a sensitive one and that they had no intention of criticizing the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee. I'm shocked. Avery Katz, a former vice dean at the law school, whom Columbia currently bills as the professor of organizational character, lashed out when Fox News pointed out that he signed the open letter in the Times calling for Kavanaugh's nomination to be pulled in 2018 amid sexual assault allegations. Asked whether he would object to Biden's appearance at the university, Katz responded that the question didn't sound like a genuine inquiry and seemed argumentative. Katz then separately emailed two senior Fox News executives to complain that the request for comment he received, as well as one clarifying email amounting to multiple trolling messages under the pretext of journalistic inquiry. That's kind of what journalism is. I'm sorry to say. If you can't handle questions, you probably shouldn't be in a position where journalists might have to reach out to you, especially given what happened during the Kavanaugh hearings. Katz added that he would block Fox News from contacting him. I'm going to add Fox News to my spam filter after sending this message. That's really mature. I've never blocked anybody. Let me rephrase that. I have blocked a few exes on Facebook, but as far as my Twitter goes, no matter how nasty the people get, I've never blocked anybody. I muted one guy because he managed to tweet at me 144 times when I compared Kamala Harris to the Emperor in Star Wars. And he went through every piece of canon to point out everything that Palpatine did in all six of the movies that he was in, and the entire Clone Wars series that was out at the time. Everything. And at a message 144, I hit mute. He's possibly still going at this point. I don't know, that was 4 months ago. He might have got bored at this point, but he's possibly still going at this point. And he thinks I'm reading it. But yeah, he was just adding nothing to the conversation and spamming. So I had to mute him. But yeah, he's welcome to say whatever he wants, but I just don't need to listen to it. I don't need my mentions filled up with that. But on top of all of that here, I would have loved to hear Biden's commencement speech. I just tweeted or quote tweeted the Biden insult bot to one of the friends of the show over on Twitter, and yeah, the Biden insult bot just puts words into a blender and recycles them out, which is pretty much what Biden does. So I would have loved to hear that speech. I think that would have been hilarious. And on the same vein here, before I get too much into comments with this, we've got CNN. Says, a complicated life and conflicting accounts muddle efforts to understand Tara Reade's allegations against Joe Biden. This is from MJ Lee and Ellie Kaufman over at CNN. As Tara Reade was leaving her job at Joe Biden's Senate office in 1993, she told a close colleague that she believed she was getting let go for an unfair reason, that she was being terminated because of medical issues she had been dealing with. The former colleague, Ben Savage, the Boy Meets World dude, described this decades-old alleged exchange with Reade in his interview with CNN. He declined to be quoted on the specific medical condition that he said Reade shared with him around that time. The previously unreported detail of what Savage says Reade told him in 1993 is among a growing set of accounts that has emerged about Reade's experience in the Biden office almost 3 decades ago. Reade, 56, has become a prominent figure in the 2020 presidential race after accusing Biden, the presumptive Democratic nominee for president, of sexually harassing and assaulting her when she worked in his office. The range of statements Reade and her friends and acquaintances and former Biden aides have made, both in public and private, about Biden's and Reade's experiences while working for him has complicated efforts to understand her most serious allegations of sexual assault. Biden himself has vehemently denied Reade's allegations, and no ex-Biden staffer has come forward to say they ever witnessed or heard any kind of sexual misconduct in his Senate office. Doug Widor, Reade's attorney, said as part of a lengthy email addressing questions from CNN that some in the media have given Biden a complete pass while subjecting Reade to hypocrisy and double standard. By her own admission, Reade did not widely share the sexual assault allegation against Biden around the time that she says it happens, making contemporaneous corroboration difficult to come by. It's funny how that is the standard all of a sudden, even though Nobody on the Kavanaugh side could corroborate anything. Over the last year, Reid has altered her public telling of how Biden behaved with her in 1993 and has one of her close friends who has been a key corroborator of the Reid's assault allegation. In years past, Reid described reasons for leaving Washington Post that were unrelated to Biden, and now she says that she left after being fired from Biden's office as retaliation for reporting sexual harassment. She's also previously described Biden as having been a good boss, sometimes speaking with pride about having worked for him. This does not sound like believing all women, CNN. I just want to make sure that you understand that. And I am holding the same standard to this allegation as I held to Kavanaugh. This means less than jack fuck to everything that's going forward, because it's 30 years ago, there's no corroboration to it, and people do sometimes go out and seek fame and fortune off the backs of somebody else. But I'm being consistent, because I said the same thing about Kavanaugh. This is literally one hand or the other hand, depending on who is in the hot seat at this point. Because, yeah, like I said, it was believe all women when it was a Trump appointee to the Supreme Court. And when it's Biden, it's we need to scrutinize this from the top to the bottom and get to the bottom of this, because we must have due process to everything. I don't mind. I don't care which direction you want to go. I really don't. But at least be consistent about it. If you thought so badly of the Kavanaugh allegations, then you need to apply the same standard to the Biden allegations. So, let's move on here before I get into a rant off of this one here. Let's go on to the unmasking. From Fox News, Andrew McCarthy bars Obama-Biden remarks. AG is making this an important point. This is from Andrew McCarthy. This is an opinion piece, but I thought this kind of verified what we said yesterday about the fact that there's not going to be an investigation. So let's read on. Attorney General William Barr's remarks on Monday signaling the Justice Department anticipates no criminal charges against former President Obama and former Vice President Biden should come as a surprise to no one, certainly to no one who read Ball of Collusion. As I noted less than a month ago, the AG observed during a wide-ranging interview with Hewitt that the subjects of the Durham investigation are not candidates for public office. Thus, they were not affected by a Justice Department guideline against bringing charges close to Election Day. By then, Biden was already the putative Democratic presidential nominee. Obviously, if serious consideration were being given to an indictment of Biden, Barr would not have made the point about the guideline. To be sure, the media reporting will portray Barr's latest comments as indicative of a rift between the AG and President Trump, whose latest Obamagate rhetoric frames the Obama-era investigative abuses as a crime, which they were, don't get me wrong. Barr's remarks will also be applauded as an exoneration of Obama's officials, probably. Consistent with the media approach that portrays Democrats as innocent victims of right-wing smears if they manage to evade indictment, while guilty until proven innocent beyond any doubt standard is applied to Republicans. Fact check true. Barr's comments will feature in the Nothing to See Here storyline, the press's counter to stunning revelations about the baselessness of the Russia collusion narrative willfully peddled by Democrats, and the exploitation of counterintelligence powers that are supposed to protect us from jihadists and hostile regimes, for partisan political purposes. To the contrary, my sense is that the AG believes there's plenty to see and be outraged about. It simply may not be criminal. Not quite. But it does lend some credence to what we're saying here about the fact that they're not going to go after Obama and Biden. The biggest part of what's going on with Obama and Biden, like I said yesterday, is the fact that there's no way to frame the investigation into either men that's not going to be tainted by partisan politics at this point. And they both very well may be guilty of what they're being accused of. It is entirely a possibility, and all the evidence is kind of pointing to the fact that they are, but you can't investigate this without everybody jumping to the throat of this is the Trump weaponizing the Justice Department. There is no way to do this in the timeline that we're sitting in right now. It is impossible. Any investigation is going to be painted as just a partisan smear job, especially with the media being in the tank for Democrats, as was said in this article here. As Andrew McCarthy said, this is This is all going to be something that's portrayed by the media as who's carrying water for these people. So, yeah, that just confirms what I was saying yesterday. All right, from the Daily Wire, senators dramatically expanding probe into Obama-era scandal thinks surveillance may have started even earlier than 2016. This is from Ryan Saavedra. 2 Senate committees are expanding their investigations into the Obama-era scandal that involved surveilling members of the Trump campaign, which Attorney General William Barr has said amounts to spying, saying that they will have reason to believe that they are becoming increasingly concerned that the surveillance started before the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Chairman Ron Johnson and Finance Committee Chairman Charles Grassley wrote a letter to Acting Director of National Intelligence Richard Grenell asking for the declassification of additional information related to the unmasking of Americans around the time of the 2016 election, but also to expand the scope of a request to include information as early as January of 2016. That would be interesting. Based on our investigation and recent press reports, we are increasingly concerned that the surveillance of the U.S. persons affiliated with the Trump campaign began earlier than the opening of the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation in late 2016. The letter continued, it has become evident that the FBI and possibly members of the U.S. Intelligence Committee were focused on U.S. persons affiliated with the Trump campaign in early 2016, if not even earlier. Again, the best way to resolve these issues is to determine the truth and to make clear to the American people what did and did not occur, the letter concluded. For these reasons, we respectfully request that you make available to us as soon as possible all information regarding the unmasking of U.S. persons affiliated with the Trump campaign requested by members of President Obama's administration from January 2016 to January 2017. The demand for more information comes after last week's bombshell revelation that numerous Obama officials, including then Vice President Joe Biden, unmasked then incoming National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. So, yeah. For the fact that they need to go and declassify so much kind of flies in the face of this whole idea that Obama has the most transparent presidency that there was, which I don't believe, of course, but that's what the media has been trying to tell us from the beginning. So, I do kind of want to see what all comes out of this. And like I said, if this gets too close to the president, they are going to have to call it because, once again, this is going to look like partisan politics. But there was something going on here. And once again, if they're going to do it to government officials, they will waste no time doing it to you or me. So keep that in mind. That looks like Ron found the name of the woman that I was trying to think of the name of over there in the live chat. Mary Burke. Yeah, that was her name, Mary Burke. She is the CEO of Trek. All right, next one here from Fox. Graham requests names of officials who sought to unmask Trump campaign transition officials. This is from Adam Shaw. Senator Lindsey Graham on Tuesday wrote to AG Barr and Acting Director of National Intelligence Richard Grenell, requesting the names of Obama-era officials who sought to unmask the identity of members of the Trump campaign and Trump transition team in 2016. The list was declassified by Grenell and then sent to GOP Senators Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson, who made the documents public last week that included the names of 39 officials who had requested the unmasking and former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn during the transition period. The list, which included officials such as then UN Ambassador Samantha Power, then Vice President Joe Biden, and then FBI Director James Comey, renewed the controversy over the origins of the Russia investigation. Flynn's calls with then Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak during the presidential transition were picked up in surveillance and later leaked. His case has returned to the national spotlight after the Justice Department moved to dismiss charges against him of lying to the FBI about those conversations despite a guilty plea that he later sought to withdraw. Trump has sought to link former President Obama to the unmasking, has dubbed the controversy Obamagate. Graham, in his role as chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, is now requesting the names of those who sought to unmask other officials on the Trump campaign and transition teams. Given the extensive numbers for the unmasking of General Flynn's name during the short period, it raises the question of whether these or other officials sought unmasking of the identities of other individuals associated with the Trump campaign or transition team. Graham wrote in a letter to Barr and Grenell. The letter requests those who sought to unmask Trump officials, including President Trump and his children, as well as officials including Kushner, Lewandowski, Conway, Manafort, Bannon, Clovis, Chris Christie, Carter Page, and George Papadopoulos. Graham also requested an explanation for why the list did not contain a record as to who unmasked Flynn's identity for his phone call with Kislyak. Trump has pressed Graham to call Obama to testify over the controversy, but Graham issued a statement last week saying that he was greatly concerned about the precedent that would be set by calling a former president for oversight. And yeah, that's a fine line that I don't know if we want to walk right now, but I mean, I would love to hear the testimony. That has implications for classification, for perjury traps, and for the indictment of a former president, which we have never done. So, we shall see what happens. This is going to be a mess. This is going to make Washington a mess for generations to come. And yeah, I do think that Obama and Biden were involved. It's just a matter of you can't go after them without making this something that the American people are going to see as just Trump administration partisan politics. And that's not what you want right now. All right. One more here about Lindsey Graham. Graham to release report on his probe into Russia investigation before election. This is from Jordan Kearney over at The Hill. Senator Graham said Tuesday he wants to release the findings of investigation into the federal Russia probe before the November election. Yeah, I would. Graham, speaking to a small group of reporters, said that he planned to wrap up the Judiciary Committee investigation by September or October. I want to do it before the election. I want to get all the information out there, Graham said, when asked if the plan to release the report before the election. Graham's timeline, which was first reported by The Hill last week, would have him releasing a report on the committee's probe only weeks before the November election. I would go a little bit further back than that, but whatever, I'm not on the judiciary. Where Trump is set to face off against former President Joe Biden, the presumptive Democratic nominee. In addition to the Senate panel examining Crossfire Hurricane, the name for the FBI investigation into Russia's 2016 election meddling, and the Trump campaign, Graham has said that his investigation will also look at the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, or FISA court. Republicans have pushed to specifically examine the handling of the investigation of former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, which was part of the Russia probe. Asked on Tuesday if releasing the report shortly before the election made it look like he was trying to influence the election, Graham replied, "I'm trying to explain to the American people what happened." But yes, he's also trying to influence the election. That's why I said you should maybe go a little bit before that. Graham is asking the Judiciary Committee to give him the subpoena authority to request interviews for documents from dozens of officials. That vote is expected to take place on June 4th, where he'll need a majority of the panel to support his request. Asked who he actually wanted to speak with in person, Graham said part of it depended on what information they could get from documents, but that he wanted to hear from major players including Comey, McCabe, and Rosenstein. He added that he wanted AG Barr to come toward the end, and that he wanted to hear from the Justice Department about his recent decision to drop the Flynn case. Senate Republican chairmen, including Graham, are increasingly ramping up their investigation into decisions stemming from the Obama administration. So, if you're going to do this just a few weeks before the election, yes, don't be surprised when people say that you're trying to influence things. And, I mean, I'm even on that train at that point because, yeah, this is October Surprise 101. And if you're going to admit that you're going to do it all the way back in May, good luck getting that one over the mainstream media. All right, so we've got an interesting story out of Georgia here that doesn't involve Ahmaud Arbery. It actually involves the politics over there. So this is from the Fulcrum, which I had not heard about before, but they got the verification, so we're going to use them. Kemp's scrapping of a Georgia election was okay, top court says. This is from Sarah Swan. It turns out Governor Brian Kemp can cancel an election and fill a vacancy through an appointment, at least in the case of the soon-to-be open seat in the Georgia Supreme Court. Last week, the court ruled 6-2 that the state officials could not be compelled to hold an election for Justice Keith Blackwell's seat after he steps down, so Kemp could go ahead with his appointment. The move has opened up the Republican governor to more criticism that he'd rather stack the court with another conservative justice than allow Georgia voters to have their say. Georgia law allows the governor to fill vacancies when the justices leave in the middle of their term. In late February, Blackwell announced he would not seek re-election, but wouldn't leave his post until November, just a few weeks before the end of his term. Initially, a judicial election was scheduled, but that plan was scrapped after a week when Kemp said he would name the replacement himself. This will be Kemp's second court appointment. When the election was called off, the two would-be candidates for the court seat, John Barrow, a former Democratic congressman from Athens, and Beth Baskin, a former Republican state legislator from Atlanta, sued to get the contest reinstated, arguing that, or what Kemp and Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger did was illegal. After losing in a state court, they appealed to the Georgia Supreme Court, but again, the court did not rule in their favor. This is touchy, and I don't necessarily like this, but technically, legally, by Georgia law, Kemp is in the right. Because Blackwell's seat will be vacated before the end of his term, technically, Kemp can appoint him. Now, in a perfect world, that would not indicate a new full term. In fact, it would just be Kemp appointing somebody to go and fill out the rest of the term, but that's not how Georgia law works. So yes, absolutely Kemp can do this. Legally, is it the best idea this close to the end of a term? No, it's not. This is probably one of the worst political ideas that may have been hatched, at least on a state level. Because there were mere weeks before the end of the term. And now you're going to fill somebody for a 6-year term without an election. So, honestly, I think Baskin and Barrow would be in the right at this point to take this one up to the U.S. Supreme Court, because I know that the U.S. Supreme Court can't really rule on Georgia law and Georgia Constitution, but I mean, to get at least one more opinion on this, because this is, like I said, technically he's in the right, but I don't like any of this. And I like Kemp, but I don't like any of this. And of course, because it's Kemp, he's going to fill a conservative seat with a conservative's vacated seat with a conservative seat. We'll look at Ballotpedia here, just for confirmation of this. Now, of course, Keith Blackwell is listed as nonpartisan, but so is Jill Karofsky up here in Wisconsin, and she is a Madison progressive like no other. But they're listed on Ballotpedia as nonpartisan. But if we look down here, Keith Blackwell is an associate justice on the Georgia Supreme Court. He was appointed by Republican Governor Nathan Deal in June 2012 to succeed George H. Carley. So he was elected then to a full term in 2014 after running unopposed. So I do wonder, now that I read this here, because I didn't look that far into this before, I was just looking to see where he was appointed from, but it does look like the election would go through after the appointment. So why would you appoint somebody if he's just a few weeks away from getting elected back out? That's interesting. That changes things a little bit. I don't know. We're going to have to watch this story, because this is going to shape how things, how judicial nominees get handled in the rest of the country. I guarantee it. But yeah, for right now, Kemp is just trying to fill a Republican with a Republican. All right, from the Daily Wire, Trump unloads on Pelosi after her mocking morbidly obese comment. This is from Daily Wire News. President Donald Trump unloaded on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Tuesday after Pelosi mockingly referred to the president as morbidly obese on Monday night during an interview on CNN. Pelosi said during an interview with CNN's Anderson Cooper that Trump should not take hydroxychloroquine because of his age and because he was morbidly obese, despite the fact that a physician prescribed the medication to the president. Yes, listen to your doctors, people. They know your body. Trump, when asked about Pelosi's derogatory comment, said, "I don't respond to her. I think she's a waste of time." Later, when talking about political games that Democrats have played in recent years, Trump said, "These people are sick. Pelosi's a sick woman. She's got a lot of problems, a lot of mental problems. We're dealing with the people that have to get their act together for the good of the country." So, you didn't think that he was going to go without without responding to that. I mean, he says stuff. Like Shapiro says, the headstone of this man is going to read, 45th President of the United States, said a bunch of stuff. So, I don't really care that they fight with each other, except for the standards that they set for regular online discourse, because, it's okay to call President Trump morbidly obese, but when Crowder says the same thing about Tess Holliday, it's suddenly a federal crime and he needs to be dragged for it, and they need to chain him to the back of a pickup truck and end his life that way because he dared say something about a body positive activist. So, it's rules for me, or rules for thee rather, not for me. All right, the last one I have here actually I found a little bit interesting because it is the narrative, and it's what the narrative is going to say for the rest of our lives and possibly for the rest of history. Whether or not it's right, we'll never know because the woman involved is deceased. So, from CBS News, Jane Roe of Roe v. Wade said she was paid off by anti-abortion rights groups to support their movement. This is from Audrey McNamara over at CBS. Norma McCorvey, otherwise known as Jane Roe of Roe v. Wade, the landmark Supreme Court case that legalized abortion in the United States, said before her death that she was paid by anti-abortion rights groups to later oppose the abortion. McCorvey made the stunning revelation in the forthcoming documentary, aka Jane Roe, set to premiere Friday on FX. In an excerpt of the documentary reviewed by CBS News, McCorvey told director Nick Sweeney, "I was the big fish. I think it was a mutual thing," she added. "I took their money, and they'd put me out in front of the cameras and tell me what to say. That's what I'd say." Sweeney then asked, "It was all an act?" To which McCorvey replied, "Yeah, I did it well too. I'm a good actress. Of course, I'm not acting now." Of course! McCorvey, the face of the abortion rights movement at the time, came out against abortion in 1995 after purportedly finding religion at the hands of an evangelical minister. She went on to publicly participate in anti-abortion rights protests for the next 2 decades and even published a memoir in 1998 explaining her decision to change sides. "I'm on what I call the right side of the movement now because I'm fighting for life instead of death," she once told an interviewer, according to CBS Sunday Morning. When asked if she thought Roe v. Wade would be overturned, she replied, "Yes, I hope so." Her decision was national news at the time and marked a major victory for the anti-abortion rights movement. Now, what she called her deathbed confession, McCorvey died soon after her conversations with Sweeney, has upended the narrative once again. Access to abortion is still a heated issue in nearly 50 years after it became law. It's not law, people. I want you to keep that in mind. You cannot legislate from the bench. At least 8 states have restricted abortion as part of directives for banning non-essential medical procedures during the coronavirus pandemic. In Texas, where Roe v. Wade began, all of the state's abortion providers were forced to stop offering services for more than 4 weeks. It marked the first time a state has banned legal abortion since Roe v. Wade. It's still not a law. In a series of interviews with McCorvey and those who shaped her life, the documentary paints a complicated story marked by abuse and manipulation. In the official trailer for the documentary, McCorvey recalled an impoverished and rough childhood in which she was told her homosexuality was dirty. McCorvey married at 16, but she was abused by her husband after telling him she was pregnant. "It was 1969. I was pregnant and I was scared. These 2 attorneys were looking for a plaintiff to help overturn the Texas abortion laws," she said, explaining how she became involved in what would eventually become Roe v. Wade. Ironically, she herself never had an abortion. Instead, she gave up her children for adoption. As part of her interview with Sweeney, McCorvey set the record straight about her opinion on abortion. "If a young woman wants to have an abortion, fine, that's no skin off my ass. That's why they call it choice. It's your choice." Okay. A couple things that I don't like about this. First off, she said in the beginning of the interview she's a good actor. So there's really no way of knowing which part she was acting about. I mean, she was an anti-abortion activist for 20 years in the public spotlight doing this. So nobody's that good of an actress. I'm sorry. Especially when you're up in public spaces taking impromptu questions. Now, yes, if you're always reading from a script, that's going to be one thing. But impromptu questions, somewhere, sometime, the narrative is going to slip, and you're going to slip up on something. So, And this one interview, of course, is the other side of that, where this was one interview where she says, okay, yes, I was an abortion activist again. I was just taking the money because that's sweet, sweet money. But let's have a look at this here, just to point out where we're never going to see this again. Norma McCorvey, born 47, died February 18th of 2017, is never, ever, ever going to be able to set the record straight again. So we are never going to know how she actually felt about this. She passed away shortly after the interview, and that she took her secret to the grave. She was on one side of this or the other. She has publicly been on both sides of it, but we will never know where she actually stood. But of course, CNN or CBS is going to run up and tell us that this meant that she was just playing everybody for fools and abortion must be legal because Jane Roe said so. So I'm not a fan of this. Let the woman rest in peace. And I'm not a fan of the fact that the documentary is coming out either, but because I don't subscribe to network television, I have no say in it. So put whatever you want on cable network television. I am never going to sign up for it again, so it doesn't matter to me. All right, that is going to be it for news today. Let's get the news out of here. And we'll finish out the day with something that I'm thankful for. So, I've been doing a lot more gardening, and that's what I'm thankful for, is gardening. It's a calming aspect, and we saw the calm that came out of me playing Stardew Valley last night too, but I mean, to look at it, to actually make life with your hands, and to actually be able to sustain yourself out of your own property. I mean, I understand I don't own this place, but I was able to find workarounds. I'm using used milk jugs to as planters right now until I can get something a bit more permanent. But I've been doing more than just planting seeds this year. I've been using vegetable scraps as well. I cut up an onion the other day and I put the root side of it immediately into the ground, and I haven't seen anything out of that yet, but I also, because of the low-carb diet I've been doing, I've been eating a lot of green onion because it's lower in carb than a regular white onion would be. And every time I cut up a green onion, I go and I plop the leftover, the roots, into dirt, and I've got almost 3 full green onions at this point. Now, green onions are not terribly expensive, so of course to regrow them again and again is just pinching pennies at this point, but I mean, every penny counts. Every dollar that you don't have to go spend at a corporate store and depend on a supply chain for, it does count. And we've seen the supply chain interrupted. And I'm thankful for the fact that I do have this opportunity to go out and sidestep the supply chain. I do need to use some of the supply chain, but I can sidestep it a little bit, offset it a little bit, and save some of those green onions for somebody who wouldn't have the same idea that I would. And I've got some other ideas that I'm working on as well to deal with the supply chain, because we've seen an interruption and there are other ways that we can go about this. I know that a lot of people have talked about getting whole animals, and there's backup on that. So I've got an idea rolling through my head. I got to talk to Jake on it, see if he wants to invest in it or if he doesn't. And I've got a couple other investors in mind, but not going to really say too much more about the idea, because I don't want somebody to jump up and steal it, even though most of you guys are not necessarily local to me, and it's more of a local idea than a national one, but it'll be something going forward, and I'll talk to some people about it and see if we can get it going. But that is all in the planning stages for now, so I'm going to go and get some breakfast, and we will be back here tomorrow with more news. I'm sure the news is never going to stop, and there's going to be a mess of other things for us to talk about. Until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.